doing?
I'm doing fine.
Good
How
to
you
meet
doing?
you. I've been watching you on TV.
I've been listening to you on record.
Yeah, all right.
What happened to the members of Earth, Wind and Fire? Why did such a successful and joyful band face so much sadness? Behind the music and fame, the band dealt with tough times. Tragic losses, health struggles, and personal challenges hit some of the members hard. How did these events affect the group and their incredible legacy? Let's look at their journey and the heartbreaking moments they endured.
Well, if you were anywhere near a dance floor in the 70s and 80s, you know the music of Maurice White.
Maurice White was the man behind the famous band Earth, Wind and Fire. He was deeply inspired by astrology. His zodiac sign, Sagittarius, has elements of fire, earth, and air. However, it does not include water. This unique mix of elements gave him the idea to name the band Earth, Wind and Fire.
Their mix of soul, jazz, funk, and disco sold more than 90 million albums and won a Grammy for White's Got to Get You Into My Life.
Maurice started forming the band in Los Angeles, holding auditions to find the right musicians. He played percussion and also sang as the lead vocalist. The group grew to include Michael Beale on guitar, Chester Washington on reeds, Leslie Drayton on trumpet, and Alex Thomas on trombone. Leslie Drayton also worked as the band's arranger, helping shape their music. In 1971, the band released their first album, Earth, Wind and Fire, under Warner Brothers Records. The album quickly gained attention and reached #1, 24 on the Billboard Top Soul Albums chart. It even earned a gold certification in France. Critics noticed their unique sound. Some compared it to Sly and the Family Stone and the Fifth Dimension. A Detroit newspaper writer couldn't even decide what to call their music. It was a mix of gospel, jazz, blues, and rock. That same year, the band worked on a movie soundtrack for Sweet Sweetback's Badass song, directed by Melvin Van Peebles. This funky and creative soundtrack made a big impression, reaching #1, 13 on the Billboard R&B chart. Maurice's vision and the band's early work laid the foundation for their future success. Earth, Wind and Fire was just getting started.
Well, there was a vision I had of planetarium, Egyptology, all these things that come together, and they grow with time.
Maurice White went through a difficult experience in his early years. Born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1941, White grew up during a time when the city's music scene was alive with blues, jazz, and early rock and roll.
I was a jazz musician as a kid, and I learned to play the blues and jazz and gospel and that whole thing.
These were the sounds that inspired him, and he started his journey toward a music career there in Memphis in the late 1950s.
Some of my major influences was like people like Ray Charles, that's his whole group, the way he had put it together. And of course, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, people like that.
However, life was not easy for Maurice White and other black people living in the South at that time. Racism and discrimination were strong, and Maurice faced this struggle firsthand. In his book, My Life with Earth, Wind and Fire, White describes one of the most painful moments of his early life. Back then, he had a job delivering newspapers. To get his work done, he had to travel through a white neighborhood, even though it wasn't safe for a young black person like him to be there, as the sun was setting. One evening, when Maurice was doing his job, 2 police officers suddenly pulled over and stopped him. Instead of helping or protecting him, these officers harassed him. They insulted him with racial slurs, which were terrible enough. But they didn't stop there. They actually assaulted him too, leaving him scared and humiliated. Maurice explained how this incident left him shaken. He recalled feeling helpless as the officers finally got back into their car and drove away, laughing as they left him standing there.
Well, it all started back in Chicago, and during the time I lived in Chicago, I was involved with a number of different activities.
He was shaking, cold, and frightened. He had been so scared that he lost control and wet himself. That moment left a mark on him that stayed for months. In his book, he said he felt such deep fear that he vowed to always run if he was ever stopped by the police again. Maurice even planned to cut through someone's backyard if it would keep him safe. This traumatic event was something that haunted him, reminding him of how unfair life was for black people in that time and place.
Basically, we're a jazz band, and we converted a jazz band into a pop band, so it covers all areas.
Now, after he formed the band, they released their first album in 1970 and their second album, The Need of Love, also. However, neither album became very popular, and the band still struggled to find a major audience. Maurice was determined not to give up. He decided to make some bold changes. In a difficult decision, he replaced almost every member of the band, except for his brother, Verdine White, who played bass. Maurice wanted fresh talent and energy, so he invited new members, including singer Philip Bailey, who became an important part of the band.
We wanted to shoot after being universal. Being universal means appealing to everyone. So that's what that's all about.
At the same time, White began to feel restless about the band's sound. He wanted to try something new but felt trapped creatively. Working on what would end up being their last album for a while, he realized he needed a break from Earth, Wind, and Fire. In his memoir, White described feeling like a large dam was blocking his creativity. He started to imagine what it might be like to focus on solo projects and make a name for himself apart from the band. Then, in 1983, the group released Electric Universe, an album that didn't do well. Sales were poor, and the band's concerts stopped selling out like before. The excitement that once filled their studio was gone, replaced by frustration and disappointment. Feeling worn out and unhappy with the band's direction, White made a bold decision to put the group on an indefinite break. Fans and industry insiders couldn't believe it. However, for White, it was necessary. He needed time to explore his own ideas and work on projects that felt fresh and exciting. White explained that it was time for everyone to do their own thing. He didn't want to make another album just because he had to or due to a contract. Someday, they might make music together again, he said, but he wasn't sure when. Maybe in a year, maybe later. His decision seemed so casual, but to the other members, it felt like being left out in the middle of a storm. For many of them, the band was their whole life and their only source of income. Now, with the group on hold, some members had to find jobs outside the entertainment industry just to get by. White, too, had his struggles. His solo music wasn't as successful as he'd hoped. The New York Times even called his solo career a disappointment. His album had potential, with songs like Stand By Me and I Need You, but both tracks didn't take off as expected. Instead of winning fans, the songs faded out quickly. But White's troubles didn't end there. He also clashed with popular artist Barbra Streisand. He helped produce 3 songs for her 1984 album, Emotion. His songs got the best reviews, but White later found out that Barbra had secretly changed parts of his work without telling him. In an interview, he said that he was upset to find out this way. He wanted her to at least let him know if she planned to make changes to his music.
Maurice White has died of Parkinson's disease. He was 74.
Unfortunately, around this time, Maurice White's health also began to decline. White was eventually diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a serious illness that affects the brain's ability to control movement. Parkinson's happens because certain nerve cells in the brain die off, making it hard for the brain to produce dopamine, a chemical that helps control movement. Over time, the illness makes everyday tasks harder and harder. However, on February 4, 2016, the sad news everyone feared finally came. Maurice White passed away in his sleep at his Los Angeles home, peacefully ending his long battle with Parkinson's. He was 74. My brother, hero, and best friend Maurice White passed away peacefully last night in his sleep, Earth, Wind, and Fire co-founder Verdine White said in a statement released to the press. While the world has lost another great musician and legend, our family asks that our privacy is respected as we start what will be a very difficult and life-changing transition in our lives. Thank you for your prayers and well wishes. Maurice White will always be remembered as the heart and soul of Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Come on, move your hand like this, wave your hand, come on.
Now, have you ever helped someone only to feel pushed aside later? That's what happened to Perry Jones. who was a big part of Earth, Wind & Fire's early journey. Let's talk about how things started well, but didn't end as smoothly as Perry hoped. In the early days, Earth, Wind & Fire was just trying to find its place in the music world. They worked hard in Los Angeles and managed to get noticed by Warner Brothers, a major music studio. Perry Jones was their main contact at Warner Brothers, and he quickly became more than just a business connection. He became a friend, especially to Maurice White, the band's leader. Perry even helped Philip Bailey, one of the group's key members, by guiding him and giving advice. Perry believed in the band and wanted to see them succeed. When Earth, Wind & Fire decided to leave Warner Brothers and join Columbia Records in 1972, Perry hoped this would mean he could manage the group full-time. He was so close to them that he even lived at Maurice White's house for a while. But things didn't go the way Perry had planned. Columbia Records brought in its own management team, and Perry found himself pushed out. The new management made it clear that there wasn't room for him. This change hurt Perry, especially since he had been so deeply involved in helping the band get started. Philip Bailey wrote about this tough situation in his memoir, Shining Star. He explained how having Perry around began to cause problems in the group. People were feeling tension, and it became clear that Perry's time with them needed to end. By the end of 1972, Perry left California and returned to Denver. Philip said he felt bad about how it all turned out, because Perry had done so much for the band. He hoped they might cross paths again someday. One of the changes Maurice made to the band was adding a female singer, Jessica Cleaves. This increased the number of vocalists to 3. However, this decision came with a new set of challenges. Jessica Cleaves, though talented, had some issues that affected the group. Philip Bailey shared in his memoir, Shining Star, that Jessica started to skip shows and miss some important performances. But that wasn't her only struggle. She was also dealing with substance abuse, which affected her work and relationships in the band. Bailey remembered Jessica fondly, saying, "Everybody loved Jessica like a sister. She was the sweetest person with those beautiful eyes and her amazing voice. I was sad we couldn't make it work with her." Unfortunately, Jessica eventually decided to leave the band. After her departure, Maurice decided that the group would no longer have a female vocalist and would continue with just the male members. Sadly, Jessica passed away on May 2, 2014, at the age of 65 after suffering a stroke. Her voice and legacy continue to bring joy to her fans. Maurice, however, seemed less emotional about Jessica's exit. In his own book, My Life with EWF, he explained that Jessica wanted to live with her new husband in Kansas. He added that her struggle with substances would have made it hard for her to stay in the band anyway. During this time, the group faced another tragedy. Charles Stepney, a talented arranger and producer, was working with the band on their album, Spirit. One day while they were recording, Stepney had a heart attack. He was taken to the hospital and survived the attack, which gave the band some hope. But sadly, it wasn't the end of the troubles. Not long after, they received terrible news. Stepney had passed away at his home in Chicago. Philip Bailey shared how deeply Stepney's passing affected the band. In Shining Star, he recalled, "After we finished some tracks in Hollywood, we got the phone call. Charles was found dead in his home. We were devastated." Stepney's death left a hole in the band, both personally and professionally, and it changed their direction in music. Maurice also expressed how sudden Stepney's death felt. He wrote, "No matter how it happens, death is always a shock. Stepney's death was so unexpected." Maurice and the band had to find a way to keep going, even though they had lost a key person who helped shape their music. Later on, Charles Stepney's children sued him, claiming Maurice owed their father unpaid royalties. Maurice firmly denied any such agreement and stood his ground, saying he didn't know anything. Moving on to another band member. Known for his angelic falsetto, Bailey captured hearts worldwide. Yet behind the dazzling stage lights, his life was marked by personal struggles and a profound spiritual transformation. From an early age, his musical talent was evident. His mother often recalled how he could hum tunes before he could even speak. Bailey's life took a monumental turn when Maurice White, the visionary founder of Earth, Wind & Fire, invited him to join the band. At the time, Bailey was a college student, unaware of the profound impact this decision would have on his life and the music industry. Behind the success, Bailey faced personal challenges. The pressures of fame, coupled with the temptations of the music industry, led to struggles with substance abuse and a sense of emptiness. At his lowest point, Bailey embarked on a spiritual journey that would transform his life. In the 1980s, he found solace in Christianity, which became a cornerstone of his personal and professional life. After Earth, Wind & Fire took a break, things started well for Philip. He launched his solo career and released 3 albums in just a few years. His faith gave him the strength to overcome his struggles and inspired his 1984 solo album. Fans were excited to see what he could do on his own. One of his albums, Chinese Wall, even gave him a hit song, Easy Lover, with Phil Collins. That song was huge and made people think his solo career would keep going strong. But in 1986, Philip released an album called Inside Out, and it didn't do as well as expected. The music industry can be very harsh, and if something doesn't sell, record labels often make quick decisions. That's exactly what happened to Philip. One day he was called to the office of the new boss of Columbia Records' West Coast division. Philip thought this might be a meeting about his future projects or some good news. Instead, he got shocking news. He was being dropped from the record label. Columbia no longer wanted to work with him. In his book Shining Star, Philip described how painful that moment was. He said he tried to stay strong and act calm. He smiled and left the office, but inside he felt crushed. He had worked so hard, and now all of a sudden, it felt like everything was falling apart. He was also struggling financially because of delays in projects and promises that were never kept. Being dropped from a record label was a big blow to Philip's confidence and career. It was a reminder of how unpredictable the music business can be, even for someone as talented and famous as he was. But Philip didn't give up. Over the years, he continued making music and stayed connected with his fans, proving that tough times don't last forever. When Maurice was still with the band as their leader, some band members felt he was being too controlling. This tension came to a head when guitarist McKay began to feel that the money wasn't being shared fairly. He thought that White was taking more than his share, leaving the other band members feeling cheated. Things got so heated between White and McKay that they would sometimes argue outside the studio, trying not to ruin the vibe of the recording sessions. During a tour in South America, McKay finally had enough. After a big argument, he told White he was leaving the band. He later changed his mind, but White wasn't convinced. When McKay refused to fly with the band to their next show in Mexico, White decided to fire him. Most of the other band members were upset by McKay's departure, but White didn't seem to mind. McKay's exit gave the other members the courage to speak up about their own frustrations. Many felt White was too controlling and didn't listen to their ideas. White, however, saw things differently. He felt that some of the members didn't fully understand his vision for the band, which caused misunderstandings. Despite trying to calm everyone down by meeting with each member individually, the issues continued. Next band member is Don Myrick, who was a saxophonist and founding member. Born in Indianapolis in 1940, Myrick was a classically trained musician who had played with a variety of jazz and R&B groups before joining Earth, Wind & Fire. Myrick's distinctive saxophone playing was a key element of Earth, Wind & Fire sound, and he was featured prominently on many of their albums and live performances. He was also a member of the band's horn section, which included fellow saxophonist. But in 1993, his life ended tragically in a heartbreaking incident involving the police. The police in Santa Monica thought Don was involved in drugs. They went to his apartment with a search warrant. When they entered, they believed he had a gun. But Don wasn't holding a gun. It was just a butane lighter, something used to light fires. Sadly, one of the officers shot and killed him. This was a terrible mistake. Don's mother, Antoinette Myrick, was devastated. She took the city to court, saying the police didn't do their job the right way. The officers didn't knock or ask to come in. They just used a key to enter. The district attorney also said this wasn't the proper way to handle the situation. Because of this, Don's mother won $400,000 in a settlement from the city, but no amount of money could bring back her son. Roland Bautista was a very talented guitarist and musician. He is best known for his amazing work with the famous band Earth, Wind & Fire. Roland joined the group in the early 1970s, during a time when the band was becoming one of the biggest names in music. His guitar playing added a special touch to their sound, making it both unique and exciting. Roland's electrifying guitar solos and detailed riffs helped shape many of the band's most loved songs. Some of his work can be heard in hits like That's the Way of the World and Shining Star. He played an important role in the band during their most successful years. His influence is still a big part of their music even today. Sadly, Roland passed away in 2012 at the age of 60. His death was a big loss for the music world and for everyone who loved him, family, friends, and fans alike. Fred White was another amazing talent from Earth, Wind & Fire. He was an incredible drummer whose rhythms gave the band its signature groove. Fred's drumming wasn't just about keeping the beat, it brought energy and life to every performance. Fred joined the band at a young age and quickly became one of its key members. His work helped make Earth, Wind & Fire a powerhouse in the music world. Sadly, Fred passed away on January 1st, 2023, at the age of 67. The news of his death left fans around the world heartbroken. While the cause of his death wasn't made public, his music and legacy continue to inspire. Andrew Woolfolk was an incredible saxophonist who also played a big part in Earth, Wind & Fire's success. Born on October 11, 1950, in Dallas, Texas, Andrew started playing the saxophone at a young age. He joined the band in the 1970s, and his unique sound became a key part of their music. Andrew played on many of the band's most iconic songs and was loved for his soulful and passionate performances. Unfortunately, he passed away on April 24, 2022, at the age of 71. Andrew's contributions to music will always be remembered. His influence lives on through the many musicians he inspired.